Have you ever tried speed sewing? Me neither. So today, I'm gonna give it a try and we're gonna see what happens. Today, I'm going to make a cosplay for my son for Leon S. Kennedy, and I will put a picture of him on the screen and what he wants him to look like. And I only have about a week and a half to finish this project. So we're gonna try and get it done in the time that I have left. Let's go get started. So here I am cutting off 2 yards of this fabric I bought at Fabric Wholesale Direct, I believe was the website that I used. But I accidentally ordered about 14 yards, which I had originally only intended to order about 7 yards. Somehow I ended up with 14. I'm not really complaining because I can definitely use it. I just don't know exactly what happened. So I cut off about 2¼ yards for this particular project because that was all I needed. I cut it off and then I pre-washed that fabric so that it would be ready for my sewing. So here I am just cutting off about 2¼ yards, and then I throw it in the washing machine. And in the meantime, I traced out all of the pattern pieces, which you will see in the next clip, that I needed for his specific size. And then I cut those pieces out and began cutting out pieces from the fabric. So while the fabric was washing, I went ahead and cut out all the pieces from the paper that I needed, and then, like I said, I traced all of those pieces out, which you will see after I found all of my pattern pieces and cut them. This video is kind of long because I recorded everything that I did so that I could better determine the time that I actually spent on it, since I was trying to get this done as quickly as possible for a convention that we went to. So there's a lot in this video, and I will include chapters in case you guys want to skip around so that you guys don't have to watch everything. So if you ever wonder how they get pattern pieces back into the envelope, nice and flat, this is how I do it at least. I iron them flat so that they can fit back in the envelope and not be quite so bulky. And in this clip, I am ironing my pattern pieces so that I can have them be able to lay completely flat for when I am tracing them out or when I'm pinning them to the paper. I've found that the only way that you can really get a more accurate cut on them is if you have them completely flat. Like if they're not completely flat, you're gonna have wrinkles in them and they're not gonna be the right size. So it's also really helpful if you have to trace out pattern pieces like I did to have them be completely flat. And the reason why I trace out the pattern pieces is so that I can reuse the pattern. Because if I cut it to the smallest size, like would have been the case in this instance, then I wouldn't be able to make them in a bigger size. So I went ahead and traced the pattern pieces that were multi-sized, and that way I can reuse this pattern if I need to for a bigger size or for another project or whatever. So that's why I went ahead and did that, and you'll see that in the next set of clips. Now comes the endless tracing. So here you can see I am preparing to trace out these pattern pieces, and this is probably my least favorite part of using a multi-size pattern because, like I said before, if you want to reuse the pattern, you really need to trace out the sizes that you're using because a lot of the lines overlap and you won't be able to reuse it if you cut it. Even if you cut it to the biggest size, because of how they design these patterns, you'll ultimately be cutting into another size. So it's easier just to trace the pattern. While it's a pain in the butt, really annoying to do, it is the easiest way to preserve the pattern so that you can use it again in the future. And then something else that's very important to do here when you're tracing out these pattern pieces is making sure that you're labeling them and adding all your notches and markings so that when you do cut them out, you have all that stuff there like you would on the original pattern piece. And here I am finally laying out all of the pattern pieces on the fabric. I have pre-washed the fabric, dried it, and ironed it at this point so it's nice and flat, and I can go ahead and pin the pattern pieces to it. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm beginning to cut out the pattern pieces on the actual fabric. So in this clip, I'm actually trying to figure out what's going on with my camera because at this point, my video card decided that it was going to be full. So I had to take the video card out because I didn't have one that was empty at the time and transfer everything that was on that video card onto the computer, which actually took a couple of hours. And while I was waiting for that to be done, I did my nails as well because I was just sitting at the computer doing nothing, waiting for files to transfer. So I figured I would go ahead and do my nails as well. So in this part of the video, I am making all of the marks with a hole puncher on my pattern, and then I am marking on the pants with some tailor's chalk. And as you can see in this clip here, there are a lot of marks on these pants on both the front and the back. There's pleats on the knees. There is marks for the pockets because there's a cargo pocket and a front pocket and then a back pocket. So there was a lot of marks that I had to make. So this took me quite a few minutes to do, and there was a lot. So these were very complex pants. once I made all of the markings on all of my patterned pieces, I went ahead and serged all of the pants pieces, not the crotch though, because that would be really hard to do on a serger. And so I did the inside seam, the inseam, and the side seams on the pants so that I won't have to worry about finishing them. I have a Baby Lock Vibrant. I did not, this is the first serger that I've ever had, so I did not go for like the top of the line model. So sometimes I have to figure out what I'm doing as far as like threading the serger and stuff like that. So it's a little bit complicated, but like I said, I didn't want to go for the top of the line model because I really didn't know if I was going to like the serger, and I really do. I love the fact that I don't have to worry about my seams fraying and all of that. So in this clip, I am sewing together part of the crotch in the front so that I can then put in the zipper, because it has you put the zipper in right at the beginning, which I found to be a little bit weird, but it ended up working out. So that's what I'm doing in this clip, and then in the next clip, you'll see that I am putting the zipper in. So once you put in half of the zipper, it has you put in the fly facing. So that's what I'm doing in this clip, is inserting the fly facing on the other side. And you can see that the zipper is already inserted to the one side. And then once you put the fly facing in, you insert it to the other side. But it was a little bit fiddly, as you can see here. I was trying to make sure that my fabric was completely in the right spot before I started stitching. So in this clip, I am stitching on the other side of the zipper to the front fly. And in this clip, I am making that curved top stitching that you see a lot of times on on the front of the fly of pants. So I'm doing that here with a normal foot on my machine. top stitching down the parts of the patch pocket in the front, and it has you top stitch all the way around the outside of the pocket. So then you top stitch it onto the pants. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm top stitching the pocket onto the pants at the top all the way around the outside of the pocket. And I believe I also do it at the side, but it's within the seam allowance here at the top and on the side so that those are hidden in the seams once you stitch the waistband together and the side seams together. So right here, I am just doing the top. And then after this, I go ahead and do all the way around the pocket. And it has you do 2 lines of stitching. So you'll see me do that. I do 1 line and then I turn around and do that second line of stitching so that it was all continuous. So here I am sewing the pleats at the knees. There's just these small little pleats that you put in at the knees, I guess for ease of movement. In this clip, I am putting in the darts at the back. There's only 2 darts in this pants pattern, and they are at the back of the pants. So on this back patch pocket, in order to finish off the raw edge, I folded it down about 1/4 of an inch, ironed it, top stitched that, then folded it down a little bit more, however much the pattern called for, I'm not sure. And then I sewed 2 sides down, and that finished off that top edge. Then the next thing you do is fold in the edges all the way around the outside of the pocket, top stitch those down, and then you top stitch it onto the pants. Top stitching on that back pocket, and again here I do 2 rows of top stitching, so I go all the way around in one direction and then turn around and go back in the other direction, and it gives it a nice finished look. So this is the cargo pocket that goes on the side of the pants, and I am stitching the pleat in this pocket. However, I realized afterwards that I did not do it exactly the way the pattern called for it, and I ended up having to open it up and make it more of a box pleat than what I was doing here, and that was fine. I just had to take out some of the stitches. But the pleat was already there once I did it because I had already stitched it down. And here I am stitching it as a box pleat. So I'm just stitching across the top, and then I just removed all of the other stitches that I had in there from when I stitched it before. So here I am stitching the side seams together along the entire side of the pants, and then once I do that, I can put on the cargo pocket that I just finished making. So once the side seams were together, I could go ahead and top stitch on the cargo pocket, same way that I did the patch pocket and the back pocket, with 2 rows of stitching all the way around, and then I put the flap on afterwards. Of course it's So after attempting to stitch on that cargo pocket, I realized that I didn't have any bobbin thread, and so had to go back, fill the bobbin, and do it again. So here I am finally finishing off that patch pocket, or that cargo pocket, that I was putting on the side seams. And this is like right in the middle of the seam, so it made it really hard for me to take the pants in after they were assembled, because I would have to take the pocket off, take the pants in at the side seams, and then put the pocket back on. So I opted to adjust them in a different way since they did not fit him. They were really big on him, so I opted to adjust them at the back and at the crotch. So here I put on the flap for the cargo pocket on the side, and then I top stitch it so that it stays in place. And here is the finished cargo pocket with the flap. So here I am stitching together the inseam of the pants. And I think also right after this, I decided to stitch together the crotch from the front to the back where it wasn't already stitched together. And then after this, before putting the waistband on, I had my son go ahead and try them on and realize that they were like entirely too big. But there was nothing I could do to fix them at this point. I had to finish most of them so that I could have him try it on with the waistband on, and then I could make the adjustments that I needed to make. So in this clip, I am putting the bottom portion of the belt loops on, all the way around the pants, except for the one that's in the center back, because it has you close the center back last in case you need to make any adjustments. So here I am sewing together the waistband pieces, and there were a few of these, so I sewed them together and then I sewed the interfaced pieces together. So this is the facing pieces, and then I sewed the interfaced pieces together. So basically what happened was I wasn't sure exactly which pieces I was supposed to interface and which side was the right side versus the wrong side. So when I interfaced it and then I went to sew it together, I realized that it was wrong. So here, what I did was I ripped off the interfacing, which doesn't really matter because this is a facing piece and you will not be able to see that interfacing once everything was completely put together, and you absolutely couldn't tell. So I just ripped off the interfacing and reused the pieces so that I wouldn't have to cut out new pieces again, because I think I did it already once or twice. So I was getting a little bit pissed off at the pattern, and I just wanted to get this piece done with so that I would no longer have to deal with it, because one piece was interfaced that shouldn't have been and one piece wasn't interfaced that should have been, and I was just getting really mad. And in this clip, I am sewing on the waistband facing piece, so this piece is not interfaced. And then after I do this, I go ahead and put the interfaced piece onto the waistband facing. So here I'm attaching the interfaced piece to the facing, and I am sewing all along the outside. And then once I finish sewing it on, I will go ahead and clip the corners and turn it. And here I'm actually just marking where I'm going to turn. And I do this so that I can make sure that my seam allowances are correct, because I've had it before where I didn't do this. This is kind of something that I recently started doing, so that after I sew it and I turn it, it looks much better. The corners are crisper, the seam allowances are even. It makes a big difference at the end. So I would recommend making sure, especially on your corners, that you mark your seam allowances so that you know exactly where to turn the needle and where to pivot the machine. And here I'm understitching on that waistband so that when I turn it and iron it and press it in place, it will stay that way, so that the back inside portion of the waistband won't try to roll to the front. This makes a huge difference with that. This is on the inside where I did the understitching, and this is on the outside. And you can already see that without me even pressing it, it is rolling to the inside. So this stitching or this facing will stay where I want it because it's already starting to roll to the inside. So you can see normally it would be rolling this way. It would be like rolling back this direction, but here it's rolling this way. So it's going to easily stay because of the understitching that I did. And you won't have to fight with the facing. And here I'm just doing the same thing on the other side. So I am stitching the interfaced portion of the facing down, and then I'm going to understitch it. So here I am closing up the back seam from the back seam all the way up to the back of the pants. I'm closing up that seam, and then I will at that point have my son try them on and see what kind of adjustments I need to make. So the next portion of this project is for me to hand stitch, slip stitch all of this down, all the way around. This is the waistband on the inside, on the inside of the pant. As you can see here, this is the outside of the pants. These are the belt loops, which I have not secured yet. And this is like the pocket in the front. Oh, that's the back pocket, sorry. This one's the front pocket. So I'm gonna go ahead and slip stitch all the way from the front to the back, skipping over this back center seam in case it does not fit him. I have some way to either let it out or take it in. So in this clip, I just decided to top stitch a little bit around one of the sides because it was giving me such a hard time staying down. So I just decided to top stitch just a little portion of the overlap for the waistband there so that it would stay in place because part of it was coming up. And then right after that, I was fiddling with the belt loops and I wasn't really sure exactly how I wanted to stitch them down. So I think I just stitched down like 2 of them closed. And then after he tried them on, the pants on with his belt loop, I ended up having to sew them down in a different manner because the way they wanted you to do it made it a really narrow belt loop. And my son's belt was a little bit thicker. And in general, men's belts are a little bit thicker. So I'm not really sure why it wants you to make it such a small belt loop. I guess if you were wearing a thin belt, that would be fine. But most people don't. And so I ended up making it a little bit different. And I looped it over the waistband in the end and stitched it in place that way. And then here is a little bit of me saying hi to Nightmare. So there he is, my little snuggle bear. And you can kind of hear him in the background not right now making a bunch of noise. Nightmare! You know, when Nightmare has demands, you have to give him what he wants. He's a very demanding kitty. And this is a classic Robert move. Punch, kick, knock everything out of your pants. So if you've made it this far, I'm going to share with you guys some pictures and video from the convention that we went to and some pictures that we took with some other cosplayers. So we went to San Japan, and this was in San Antonio, Texas, and it was huge. I mean, there were so many people there on Saturday. I was really impressed at how much they had to do, how much there was for sale, and how big the convention was. There were so many things to see, and there were so many panels to sit in on, and all of that. So I really enjoyed myself, and I really enjoyed dressing up. This was the first time I ever dressed up and went to an anime convention, and I really had a lot of fun. Okay, so to wrap up this video, I will tell you that it took me about 9 hours just to sew, including the tracing, the washing of the fabric, the cutting, all of that stuff. It took me about 9 hours just to sew this up. On top of that, I had to then adjust the pants because they did not fit him appropriately. So that took me another maybe like 2 or 3 hours to finish that so that he could actually wear them, because the crotch was really low and they were really baggy. So I had to take them in and fix the crotch. So all in all, I would say it took me about 11 hours to do it over several days. But I'm happy with the results, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like my content and want to support my channel, please like and subscribe. I also have a Ko-Fi account that you can donate to if you'd like to. All proceeds will go back into the projects I am making. I hope to see you guys in the next video, and I look forward to reading any of your comments. I post weekly on Fridays. If you have something specific you want me to make, put it in the comments or send me a message. I will see you guys soon.